It's March. A lot of people conflate March with chaos, and it's no different in women's hockey. So, we're going to give you some buy or sell scenarios for the PWHL and catch up on the Frozen Four on today's episode of the Women's Hockey Report.
This is the Women's Hockey Report presented by Locked On NHL. Your weekly look at the world of women's hockey. From the PWHL to the international stage, it's the Women's Hockey Report on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, WoHo fans, and welcome to another episode of the Women's Hockey Report, coming to you a little bit earlier than usual because we wanted to make sure to get ahead of some college news. But Erica Ayala here alongside Rachel Donner, another episode again of the Women's Hockey Report brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Rachel, as always, we have a jam-packed episode. Super excited, though, to dig into some of these topics. But first, you know what we do. It's a vibe check. We'll start with you.
Well, I'm very sad because I feel sad on behalf of Canada goalies right now.
Oh, no.
It's just brutal. Now, we had the Emmeryn Smashmeyer injury, of course, from Ottawa, and now we have Ann-Renee Desbiens of Montreal is hurt, and kind of vaguely looking ahead to Women's Worlds, like that's a little stressful for Hockey Canada right now.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but perhaps it's an opportunity for a goaltender that we've talked about a time or two on the Women's Hockey Report. So we'll have to see what transpires there. Excuse me. As for me, I mean, I'm kind of digging that the PWHL announced that they reached 1 million fans. That's in attendance. And also, I think we kind of can maybe sort of claim another WoHo Report bump, right?
Maybe with Detroit, right?
And the New York Sirens get back on track with the Detroit PWHL Takeover tour. I mean, I kind of dig it.
Yeah. Every time.
That's it. Every time. So, just got to come on the show, folks. That's the problem. We haven't had anyone from Ottawa properly in studio with us, Rachel. That's what's been the missing ingredient for the season, obviously.
Perhaps.
But don't look at where Minnesota is in the standings because we did have Kendall Coyne Schofield on the show. Anyway, moving on. The bump only lasts so long, right? It's not a lifetime guarantee. Moving on. We're going to do some buy or sell because that's kind of the language that's following a lot of what's happening in the NCAA on the hard court. And the first one, Rachel, is going to deal with top of the table in the PWHL. Here is the prompt and how we're going to frame this conversation. Buy or sell. Boston can overtake Montreal for first in the standings. And let's go over some of the facts first. We do know that as of right now, Montreal still sits at the top of the table, Rachel, with 45 points. Boston right behind them, though, with 40 points. And then Toronto and Minnesota are at 39 points and 35 points, respectively, in the last of the top four spots. Ottawa just ahead of New York. So those are the standings. And then we saw the top two teams, Rachel, face off. You alluded to some injuries. We'll get into that. But again, we're going to frame the conversation about last week's game. In our buy or sell, Boston can overtake Montreal for first in the standings. So, I think this is an interesting question, Rachel, because there's a little bit of momentum and perhaps some things to consider for both teams. If you look at Boston, they are just like Montreal. They have 6 games left, but they have 2 games against Ottawa, 1 against Minnesota, who right now is in 4th place. They do have 2 against Toronto. And then only 2 of those games are on the road. One is technically a neutral site game, and they are they're considered the home team, but still not with their home crowd, so to speak. So that is interesting compared to Montreal. They played Toronto once, Minnesota once, Boston, of course, once, Ottawa once, and then New York twice. I don't know. Just going off of that, do you get an inkling of if either team has quote unquote the more favorable road or the easier schedule to close out the regular season.
I mean, I think you can argue that Boston has the easier schedule here, just because having Toronto, who's also in the mix here, and Minnesota and Boston, it feels easier for Boston here just because of the way it's structured. But I mean, I guess you can make the argument the other way too. I think it's pretty close.
I agree. I don't know that that is the game changer for me. But I am going to buy that Boston can overtake Montreal. And here's me making my case, Rachel, because, Montreal has played extra hockey in 5 of their last 6 games, including 2 shootouts, which again we saw against Boston. Now Boston has played extra hockey in 4 of their 6 games, and if you go beyond that, it's actually in 5 of their last 7. But here is perhaps what might be the reason that you make a case for Boston. In addition to that, they have that home ice advantage I mentioned in the schedule. So even if the opponents are pretty neutral, are they going to have you know, just again, being home cooking, home crowd, is that going to sway things? But the rise of the Dark Knight is Hillary. I was just trying to work
Maybe.
in that movie. I don't know, but you get what I'm going. Hillary Knight, people out of nowhere, is kind of playing to the Hillary Knight that we've known. Now,
Yeah.
26 points for first overall in the PWHL at the time that we're recording. 13 goals, is second in the league and has absolutely been on a tear and is showing us kind of like that vintage Hillary Knight. So that's me making the case for Boston and why I'm definitely buying that they, Rachel, can overtake Montreal. What are your thoughts?
So I think I generally tend to agree with you. I think the potential is there. But
Mm,
if I'm gonna make a case for selling here,
mm,
we do have to remember that Montreal, again, same number of games played,
yep,
they do have that 5-point cushion to work with,
that's
right?
true.
So there's a little room for error there.
Mhm.
Now, with the Ann-Renee Desbiens injury, that throws a little bit of a monkey wrench into all of this here, right? So she took that fall. Elaine Chuli steps in the game against Boston, and she made 10 saves on 10 shots on goal. When you're in this sort of situation, Montreal will no doubt rally around Elaine Chuli here and is going to do everything in their power. And they're going to change their defensive structure a little bit around Elaine Chuli. And like Elaine Chuli is an excellent goaltender to boot, right?
Correct. Correct.
So I feel like there's just an extra motivational thing there
Mm,
for the Victoire, given all that, you know?
yeah, I hear that.
Yeah. So the other thing is that Montreal scoring comes more from depth scoring. And we've talked about that
It's true.
before.
That's true.
That you have Marie-Philippe Poulin is their leading scorer, but she's at the bottom of the top 10
Right.
in scoring. And yet Montreal is still in first place. So
Yep.
I think like that bodes well for them for the well-roundedness of Montreal's game. Like I said, they're better defensively. We do have to put the Toronto asterisk there because I think Toronto's gunning for both of these teams at the moment.
For sure.
But I do think Montreal can hold off Boston as long as they play well defensively.
Yeah, I think either is possible. And you mentioned Elaine Chuli. The thing that I was thinking while you were saying that is not only do they want to rally behind Ann-Renee Desbiens and then support right their presumptive new number 1 goaltender in Elaine Chuli. We talk about this a lot on Locked On Kraken. I'm the host of Locked On Kraken, and we're having a little bit of a goalie issue there. But one of the reasons that Philip Grubauer continues to say that it's difficult to come in when you haven't played a significant amount of games, right? And you're
Mhm.
just waiting in the wings, waiting in reserve. And I think you can say the same about Elaine Chuli. Elaine Chuli is she's got the game of a starting netminder. She is Isabel Cup champion as, as a starting goaltender. And when you don't get as many reps, it's definitely going to take a little time to adjust. Now, that being said, you mentioned how many saves she was able to make. The adjustment maybe won't take as long as it's taken for Philip Grubauer, for Elaine Chuli. But it is definitely something where how good can Elaine Chuli be once she has that comfort and is back into a rhythm in net? So
Right.
I
And
like
that's
what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is that she hasn't been the presumptive starter all season. And
Exactly.
so to get back into that rhythm of being the number one goaltender, playing almost every game, like I think that will help Elaine Chuli.
For sure, absolutely. And before we move on, I think what this also introduces, Rachel, is that we saw Jared Book, right, reporting from Montreal practice that there was another goaltender on the ice. And the reason I want to mention this is because on our last episode, right, Rachel, last week, we talked about how there was a trade deadline and effectively a roster freeze. So now that there's an injury, what is there a rule, a hard rule? Are there exemptions for LTIR? Because we still have some game left and in or regular season games left, I should say, Rachel. And smack dab in the middle of the regular season is also an international tournament. So as much as we would like to hope that we won't see another injury, I mean, can you really bank on
I don't know. I think like it's really tough. Now, Jared was reporting that Trisha DeGear has been at Montreal practice since the injury to Ann-Renee Desbiens, and that she is potentially signing a 10-day contract there. So she would, I think, then become the presumptive backup there when they already have somebody else that then would stay on their reserve squad ostensibly.
that?
But that is to be determined, and we'll probably find out shortly after recording this.
Yeah,
But
naturally. That's always how it works.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But we did put out an ask to the league at the time that we're recording. And if we get any updates on not just Montreal's situation, but I would assume that any situation or any uh, uh, exemptions that Montreal has, then the rest of the league would also have access to should one of their players fall to injury. I think another little wrinkle specific to Montreal that I have in mind is, has Trisha been a part of the roster in any capacity as a reserve and the like? Because again, at least the way I'm thinking of a roster freeze, a freeze is a freeze is a freeze is a freeze, right? You're either on the roster at the freeze or you're not. So again, we have some things that we have requested. And again, there's so many other great reporters that we're going to keep our eyes and ears out to see what's happening there. But wanted to put that out there. Plenty to talk about as we continue on today's episode of the Women's Hockey Report.
Did you know getting a good night's sleep is the #1 recipe for long-term success in life? I didn't. It took me way longer to realize than I'd like to admit. It was years of tossing and turning. I was always tired. I never felt like I could live up to my potential, but not anymore. Thanks to Bear Mattress. I used their sleep quiz and I matched with the Elite Hybrid. It's perfect for side sleepers like me. Now I wake up energized. I'm getting deeper sleeps and I'm ready to attack the day. No matter how you sleep, Bear Mattress has a match for you with a focus on recovery, cooling, and pressure relief to upgrade your sleep and improve your overall quality of life. Go to bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
And welcome once again to the Women's Hockey Report. Erica L. Ayala here alongside Rachel Donner. We gave a little buy or sell with regard to the PWHL, Rachel. But we also have some women's Frozen Four, and this is the reason that we're bumping our episode, because we didn't want to lose out on the opportunity to talk about the games happening on Friday. The Frozen Four has been set. It's pretty much chalk, as they say in brackets, bracketology. So we did see Wisconsin, Minnesota, Cornell, and Ohio State advance. And the first game will be at, and since it's Central Time, I'm going to say local time because no one ever thinks it's Central Time. 4 p.m. Central Time. We've got Cornell facing the Ohio State University. And at 7:30 local time, Central Time, we have Wisconsin taking on Minnesota. And buy or sell, Rachel, this is how we're going to frame this conversation. Buy or sell. The best team in the land, Wisconsin, can be overtaken in the Frozen Four, either at the semifinal level or in the championship game.
Yeah, it's a tough task for anyone. And I will say I did watch the game between Wisconsin and Clarkson in the earlier round. And Clarkson absolutely made a game of it. I think that it was definitely not an easy road for Wisconsin to get there. And so, like, my gut here says, and obviously we know, like, all 3 Patty Caz finalists are in Wisconsin, all of that thing. My gut says sell, just because Wisconsin is a find a way to win team, right? And that other teams, like, they can make it competitive, but when it comes down to it, when everything is on the line in a tournament like this, like, Wisconsin's just going to find the way to win. And there's no way around that. Doesn't matter how good these other teams are. And it could be close, but Wisconsin's going to win.
I mean, and the Badgers lead the nation in goals, 211 total. Power play percentage at basically 36%. A PK percentage at 91%, rounding up. They're tied for first in shutouts with 12, and they have a 95% winning percentage. And I mean, that's pretty elite, Rachel. That's pretty freaking elite. And that I didn't even list the categories where they're number 2, right?
Right.
I didn't even go into that. There's something though, and I haven't given my buy or sell answer yet. I think I'm still mulling it over in real time. I do have to say, since Nadine Muzerall took over the Ohio State University, they play with some, you know me, I like swag, I like moxie, I like my P&V and sandpaper. And that's what this Ohio State team has. That's what the program has been built to be. And I love it because I don't want to say that, let me phrase it this way. On the ice, we know that women's hockey for decades has had all of that, including some high level drama, right? We know that. But when I think about how a program at the college level identifies, I just don't know that we've seen a program lean into almost like this villain character, right? To the point where they even
Fair enough.
Right? They had those black like jerseys and they were like, well, we think they're awesome. We don't care, like Michael Jordan style, right? We don't care if you're gonna find us. We're wearing these because they're sick type vibes, you know? So I don't know. I love that. I'm attracted to that. I think it's just good for the game. But there are some holes in this Ohio State team, particularly in special teams. And despite what a former USA Hockey women's head coach once told me, I do think that special teams are pretty freaking important in a tournament like the Frozen Four. And when you look at some of these numbers from Ohio State, I mean, they have 250-plus point scorers, Jocelyn Amos and Joy Dunn, both sophomores. So they're not even done yet. I can only imagine that this Ohio State team is going to get better, but 6th in power play goals in the nation. So this is not obviously you can't be 6th in a Final Four, in a Frozen Four, right?
Right.
In the nation. These are, stats throughout the year. They're 8th in power play percentage and 24th in the PK. To me, those numbers, I don't like them. I don't like them. And as much as I kind of want to say Ohio State, it can take it. I think the dark horse, a la our first conversation, actually might be Minnesota. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think if anybody's going to beat Wisconsin, it has to be Minnesota in that semifinal game today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the dark horse here. Oh, I do like Minnesota. I know that they felt that they got a little bit of a raw deal a few years back in their bracket and have had a little bit of a difficult time evening out their program since then. But I think I have to go with you. I'm gonna have to sell. I think Wisco, they're the top team
I
for a
know.
region, Hello, for a region, literally, yes, for the WCHA, but also for a reason. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. Um, I don't know. And I don't know if they consider themselves honey badgers, but a badger is a badger, right? And you don't want to be caught on the wrong end of an angry badger. So I don't know. Wisconsin, it's looking like another championship. I mean, Ohio State, I like what they have in the next handful of years. I just don't know if this is their year. Also,
Right.
I come from the WNBA, and I don't know if you know this, Rachel, but those LA Sparks versus Minnesota Lynx battles where every other year one team would win. One year, one program got the evens, one program got the odds. And if I remember from our last conversation, I think the odd years are in the favor of Wisconsin for the most part. So there you go, 2025 champions. You heard it here.
Yeah, listen, prove us wrong. Prove
Yeah,
us wrong, any other team.
that's
Please
it.
do it.
Yeah,
Please do it, 'cause
posterize
it'll be fun.
posterize the women's hockey report. Let us know
Yeah.
that you heard this, you don't like what we had to say. I mean, I'd love to see it. I love drama, so do it. But yeah, it is Wisconsin's to lose. It really feels that way.
Yeah, I just don't think there's any way around it. But again, I would love to see the drama. So I may, I may be rooting for Minnesota. I may be rooting for Ohio State, assuming they beat Cornell, because I think that's what's going to happen. But
Yeah. I mean, either way, how lucky are we that we get to see some amazing hockey? We're going to
very
get a
true.
chance to, crown another Patty Caz winner. They will definitely be from Wisconsin. We already
Yep.
know that. That is a guarantee. Someone from Wisconsin will win the Patty Caz Award this year. We know that for sure. But we want to keep our finger on the pulse here. Again, we're
Yeah.
dropping this episode early. So some of you might be watching it on Saturday where we'll be getting ready for the championship. But we wanted to really just get ahead of this. And then in the next coming episodes, we're going to be able to pull from this Frozen Four the overall run to the championship and see how it can relate to what we're seeing in the PWHL. Obviously, so many PWHL players have ties to all of the programs, quite honestly, that made the field this year. So we'll be able to break that down. And then there's another big tournament, Rachel, coming up that we'll have to talk about. We're going to get into all of that in the coming episodes of the Women's Hockey Report, but not before we end this one. And of course, we have to give you our game of the week. And we've already alluded to this, Rachel. There's some pretty big implications on the line for the top of the table, but maybe we have some teams that can play spoiler. We'll get into all of that coming up on today's episode of the Women's Hockey Report.
Daylight saving certainly snuck up on me. It wreaked havoc with my sleep patterns. And if you're also feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through, whether you're staying up late watching those NCAA tournament games, the Frozen Four that we just talked about, or just trying to keep up with your busy day. 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick me up whenever you need it. Whether I'm at a game or traveling or going on a hike, 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab and keeps me feeling refreshed. So head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack, have it delivered right to your door. So if you need one now, grab that 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery store or convenience store. They're everywhere. stock up today and stay energized.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Thanks as always for making the Women's Hockey Report a part of your listening schedule. Erica L. Ayala, Rachel Donner here. And we've already talked about a lot. We've done some buy or sell here, Rachel. And so now it's time to get to our game of the week. Also, we do have some clinching scenarios that I want to go over as well. But, we can do that by way of our game of the week. So upcoming on Saturday, we have Ottawa, New York. Sunday, Toronto, Montreal. Tuesday, we have New York at Ottawa. Wednesday, Toronto at Boston. And also Wednesday, we have Montreal at Minnesota. Oh, yeah. So Rachel, for you, is there a game that you are keeping eyes on?
Well, it is interesting. So this week, Boston and Minnesota are the teams with only one game, and the other teams have 2 games each in the week. So there's some opportunities there per our first segment discussion about the overtaking and games in hand and all of that. But for me, my game of the week pick has to be Toronto at Montreal on Sunday. And it's a little precursor to the Frozen Four final game that day, if you want a good full day of women's hockey to watch. And I mentioned Toronto as my asterisk and potential spoiler in the Boston versus Montreal conversation, because they're sticking with it here in the standings. And especially given the situation with Montreal right now, this is an opportunity. Toronto right now is only 1 point behind Boston. So they could overtake Boston here with a win in Montreal, and that would be huge and upset the entire apple cart. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that one.
Yeah, there's so many things that are potentially at stake here, including not necessarily the final seed, but playoff clinching scenarios. And so, I'm with you. That Toronto game is huge. I think also, Montreal, the Toronto game in Boston is huge. But so, we do know that the Victoire, they have an opportunity if they can get to 50 points. They would advance over the Frost as far as being able to get one of those playoff spots because they have the tie-breaking procedure in their favor. An alternate path for Montreal to clinching would be to capture 5 points in 2 wins against Boston and the Scepters. And then, that also has some implications with Ottawa as well, but we're focused a little bit more on Montreal here. So I think alternatively there, the Ottawa games for them are pretty important here. I mean, and I feel like we say Ottawa every week, but they're a team that they kind of tend to be dangling here or there. You think they're making a little bit of a push, but then they don't quite get to the finish line. But it's really kind of now or never for them. I think if they really want to make a push, they're going to have to do it this week because, like you said, they're one of the teams that does have 2 games to play alongside, of course, Montreal, New York, and Toronto. So they need to be able to get these games going. Boston only the 1 game, Minnesota only the 1 game. They're not really in the reach of Boston, Rachel, but Minnesota, who we've seen drop in that 4 spot. That is who Ottawa is chasing. So I'm really looking at both of those games for the Charge. And are they going to show us what kind of team they can be? They take on New York twice. Not a given because, again, we did see New York bounce back in Hartshie's hometown, which was very cool. But Ottawa really needs to show once again, if they're a legit team.
Right. And they very specifically said, we chose to make no moves at the trade deadline because we believe in this team and who we are. And now it's time to show it. And, we talked about the 5-point gap between Montreal and Boston. Well, there's just a 5-point gap between Minnesota and Ottawa. It's the same. And, Ottawa has games in hand, like you said.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's very possible. They just have to
Yes.
put games together.
They do.
Consistently, which
And-
has been a struggle for
It
them.
has been a struggle for them. I think we talked about goaltending. You can't mention Ottawa right now without mentioning, I mean, you alluded to it early in the show, right? But Emryn Smashmeyer, LTIR. So, Gwyneth Phillips, who had, a fantastic rivalry series. We're assuming that she's going to have to step up here. But I will say, and we've alluded to this as well, even including when we were boots on the ground in Raleigh, Maddie Rooney seems to be having a Hillary Knight-esque kind of resurgence here. And we have wondered on the show a time or two if maybe this has anything to do with the World Championships rosters announced. And of course, Rooney not being on that roster.
Yep. That's playing with a chip on your shoulder if I've ever seen it, in the best way possible.
Indeed. So, I mean, Maddie Rooney just continues to climb up in some of the stats that we're seeing for goaltenders. I think it's worth noting, especially as we enter another week of no Mashmeyer and now perhaps a week without Ann-Renee Desbiens, just something to consider. That being said, you still have to win the games and perform well in the games. And Maddie Rooney has been able to do that. To an extent with what she's doing now. The team has to just be able to score in front of her, which we've seen a time or two in this league as well. Oh man, Rachel, so much excitement that we couldn't contain it and we couldn't wait to post it until Saturday. So a little Friday bonus for you. If you are watching on Saturday, then you already know who's headed to the Frozen Four Championship. And don't worry, our future selves will catch up with you. But for Rachel Donner, Erica L. Ayala here. And hey, if you're not already tuned in, make sure that you're listening to Locked On NHL. Of course, Rachel is one of your Friday hosts there alongside Gil Martin, who a long time was working with us to get our women's hockey program off the ground. So stick taps to Gil always. But you can always check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey, become a fantasy hockey expert, and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. But for Rachel Donner, Erica L. Ayala here, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the chaos that will ensue in hopefully like a loving, light, no more injuries kind of way. But yes, we do want some women's hockey chaos. And we will catch you on the next episode of the Women's Hockey Report. Have a great weekend, everybody.